I'm Chris, and this is Brant. We're from Acquia. I'm Chris from Acquia, and there are really so many of us that we got t-shirts, so I had to wear mine today. And I sell Drupal. So I work for Acquia, but I spend probably the majority of my time talking with customers about why they should choose Drupal for their web content management, their web experience management, insert management of something. It's marketing automation. It's a combination of things. It's really about managing great digital experiences online. So how many Drupals would you like? Does anybody else sell Drupal? Does anybody have to go into either their organizations or out to their customers and figure out how to get Drupal into those organizations? Anybody? Any challenges around doing that? Is it easy? I don't think it's necessarily easy. I think it's kind of hard, but I think it's hard for some specific reasons. One, because it's infinitely flexible. So Drupal is what you want it to be. So when someone says, I just want to see this Drupal thing, it's like, what do you want it to be? Do you want it to be a healthcare site? Do you want it to be an application showing you images from Mars? Do you want it to collect input from the people of the United States so the government can actually be forced to respond to you? It can be all of those things. So it's infinitely flexible, and it's also out of the box, not much to look at. So when somebody says, oh, we're considering Drupal, they go to Drupal.org. If you download Drupal, great. I want to try it out. It's free. It's open source software, and I get that. I get Bardic. I get a content type. It's not much to look at. So customers say, show me Drupal, and then we kind of stall. We try to be consultative right up front and say, well, what would you like it to be? We can show you all sorts of different things. We can get the list of different things you want it to be, and customize that experience. And it's, we talk sometimes in the community about this being kind of a box of Legos, but when you go into, and that's great because you can build anything out of them. You can build what you need to, when you need it to. But that's a really hard concept to sell, especially into large organizations. So it's really hard to go into a large financial services company and say, well, here's your Lego box, and this is what, you can build lots of cool stuff out of it. Now, the reality is you can really build cool stuff. It's massively powerful. It's built on a tremendous community. But they really have a hard time getting past that initial idea that we have to build stuff. Basically, we don't have this kind of out-of-the-box experience. And our competitors, so we look at competitors in the sense of these really large proprietary companies, so Adobe, Sitecore, Oracle. These are the kind of competitors that we're going up against and we're going into our customers to talk about. They're really good at this stuff. So they don't necessarily have all the secret sauce, but they say they do, and they can really show a pretty cool demo. So it's awfully shiny when they show the integration of their vertical stack to do all of their marketing magic. So we needed a better answer to get past this point. So get to the point where we could really go in and compete on an even playing field and use all the great stuff that we know Drupal's already capable of. So Drupal can do anything that Adobe CQ can, that Sitecore can, but it doesn't always demo well. It doesn't always have a good story around it. So we've actually tried to start the process of building something that can answer that question. And Brant is going to talk about the nuts and bolts about how we did that, because this is kind of, I'm not standing up here to do a big marketing session. It's really about how we practically did that, how we started building some tooling to do that. But we had to stand on the shoulders of giants to do that. We really took great things that the community is doing and tried to build an answer. So what's the story that we're trying to tell with this, this overall approach? It's really about offering a different way of thinking about how you build web experiences. And Drupal really does offer you different ways of thinking about how you manage content, how you manage the interrelation of content and people, and showing the right content to the right people at the right time. And it allows you to bring together what we call the 3 C's, content, community, and commerce into a single platform, so you don't have to plug together all of these disparate platforms to create a site or an application or an experience that's cohesive. It's also a different way to think about content. So if you look at a lot of these systems that these proprietary vendors are selling, you get past kind of the glitz of the in-place editing and these kind of Visio-style workflows that look awfully complex and powerful, but at the heart of them, they often look like Windows Explorer kind of just threw up on your screen. They're very hierarchical in nature. They're very fixed. They're very page-oriented, and Drupal's always been oriented towards connecting data and using the data that you have in different ways to suit not just what you have to do today, so the website and the structure behind that site that you need right now, but what you need tomorrow. So do I need to remix this and put it into a different platform? Do I need to figure out a way to pipe this out to Facebook? Do I need to pull this into my marketing systems? Do I need to send this out in email blasts? So Drupal's great at connecting those things together. And it also, going back to sort of this Lego block metaphor, it does change the way that experiences are built. And it's important both to the people that are choosing to use Drupal, but it's also important to the people that ultimately have to implement it. So it fundamentally is cloud-based. You can deploy all of this stuff into the cloud, but really you have really flexible options for deploying it. It gives you a really strong set of core APIs and tools to work from, and a huge library of both knowledge and functionality that you can get from the contrib space, and it allows you to create unique experiences on top of that. So what were we doing wrong? Because we took an approach that was probably like many in the Drupal community. It's very technically focused. We like solving problems. So we hear, I've got this problem, and we think, oh, but we got all these cool modules and things that we can plug together to solve that. But we really make it awfully complicated. So, the ask is, well, can I tailor what I'm seeing on the website based on where the person is coming from? And sometimes their answer would be, oh yeah, sure, Drupal can do that. Let me show you how to use the content geolocation module, or let me show you. You want to know about permissions in Drupal? Well, let me show you the 10,000 checkboxes on the permissions screen, and that just sends people running scared for the hills. So, what we've tried to do is a couple of things. We're trying to build a kind of a technical platform, a distribution that we at Acquia can use internally to go out and talk about Drupal and sell Drupal in these big organizations, but also that you as a community can take and iterate on. We hope that it's going to be useful for people to use, because we're taking all the feedback that we're getting where either we're not showing the technology the way that it really needs to be to get to these audiences, and we're trying to put that into a technology framework, but we're also trying to change the way we talk about things so that we can put it in the language of people that are not familiar with open source. They're not familiar with tools that you can extend. So we're coupling both the technology piece of it, which Brant is going to go into, kind of show you some of it, show you the guts of it, how we put it together. But then we're also building a storytelling element that we also want to share with you guys, and hopefully have people contribute to, because ultimately, if we can go sell more Drupals, it's really good for everybody, because there's a huge untapped market, both of participants, people that are going to develop new stuff, as well as people that can use the stuff and thereby help ultimately all of us out, whether it's through contribution back to the project or simply by employing some of us. So I'm going to turn it over to Brant. We're going to do a quick tag team swap on the monitors, and Brant's going to go into exactly what we built.
Okay, sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties. I can't. Mirrored. Sucks for me because it's not what I prepared for. Cool. So see that? Good. All right. So hi, I'm Brant. I'm a solutions architect at Acquia. I work with Christian, and what I've been doing for the past almost 6 months has been working on a new distribution for Drupal because of the problem that we've had where people have come to us and said, "Just show me Drupal," and not to sort of beat a dead horse, but essentially when someone says, "Just show me Drupal," and you say, "Okay, cool, let's go to DO," what you end up with is, you get to the homepage and you show them all these things about Drupal. So Drupal has 971,000 contributors, and there are all these sites made with Drupal, but why should you choose it? And it's a lot of information, and I think that as a developer, this page makes some sense to me, and I remember where it was about 5-6 years ago when I started using Drupal, and it's better now than it's ever been, but it's still not something that's going to really show you Drupal. And so, the reaction is often this, and you're left with sort of wondering what to do now. I could maybe go back, okay, and okay, let's look at getting started with Drupal, and let's look at some of the modules, and we'll look at the modules page and see that there's tons of modules, and I'll talk then about the popular ones, and still, it's the glazed sort of, Marty McFly look of just like, what are you talking about? And so it's clear that I can't show you Drupal with just Drupal.org. And in sales presentations, that we do for clients or potential clients, often are very slide deck driven, and a deck about Drupal is good too. Obviously, showing people that things like the White House and all of these big sites are on Drupal is huge. And if you were in Josh's presentation, you saw some of the sites that he went through, and his deck was effective to a certain degree about, if it was limited to just that for showing Drupal. So we end up in this position where they say, well, we need to see more than just that. And so it ends up being, sorry, I can't show you that module working today. Let's meet next week and we'll talk more about this. And then we do, and I understand you still have some more questions, and so these calls end up being a history of Drupal and other stuff, and it's boring, and it's not engaging, and it's not something that wows anybody, and it basically makes you feel kind of two ways. Drupal is kind of hard to understand. Probably that means it's hard to implement, and that's a problem. But that's not really the end for us with Drupal. We're just beginning, and Drupal's just starting to get big. And I just have this big DrupalCon on the screen, rolling full Kool-Aid guy on you guys, because it really is an awesome time to be in Drupal. And so it's an oh yeah moment, because everyone in this room that's a developer that wants to raise their hand can, but so there's like not that many developers in this room, which is awesome. So we all are essentially drank the Kool-Aid, and we think that Drupal is really great, but we don't get taken that seriously when we talk about Drupal and how great it is. We're just devs, and we're not that special. We're not decision makers at companies typically. Unless we are developers that started our own company and are doing the technology choosing, we probably aren't the technology choosers. The technology choosers are people from various aspects. They might be in marketing. It might be someone that has to use the website to build marketing pages. It might be someone who is just the business stakeholder. It might be the CEO of the company who just has to feel good about stuff. And so what we find is that, teaching myself a few things from the community has shown me that the Drupal way. And the Drupal way doesn't involve being a developer. It just understands that, I can use contributed software, I can use open source software, and I can actually work on it, and it's free, and I can give back to that, and I can improve the project, and the project can grow, and I can make more money, and so can you, and so can he, and so can my competitors and everyone else, but we're all gonna use this Drupal, and it's gonna be pretty awesome. what that means to clients, though, it still comes back to the money problem of it doesn't come with licensing fees, but so there was what, like maybe 50 people in the room right now, and 3 people raised their hands. That is a very shifted market for who the people feel in this situation like can implement Drupal for them. There were 5, maybe 3 to 5 people in here that could spin up this Drupal site and implement it for the customer in question at this point. And so it becomes like, this is going to cost me a lot of money, and I can't get everything out of the box. So we see that sales really we don't want to communicate that this is necessarily like a bad thing that you have to bring in developers and have expertise. But what we do have to communicate then is something more about Drupal, more of a real demo of Drupal, not the blue Bartik theme or DO, but something that gets people excited to the point where they say, you know what, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on a licensing fee, or I'm going to spend a little bit of extra money on developers, and actually, honestly, have a lot of access to different developers and different shops and lots of choices, so it's not necessarily that bad of a thing, and it's not as expensive as it really looks, but it does require getting them behind Drupal and understanding that they want to use it and that they want to spend the extra money because, yeah, it's free, but it doesn't really seem like much. So it requires a real demo. And so we've started to build something, and this is, to me, the way that we've approached this. I mean, you're looking at essentially, for the most part, the team that has done all the code that had to go into this. And honestly, it wasn't that much code. It was a lot of building features, but it was building a distribution as an MVP, basically taking kind of a lean startup model within Acquia, which is a pretty big organization, not huge, but around 300 people, and saying like, we're going to do this inside of our department, and we're going to build a product that will, at first, definitely help us because we need it. We don't need to spend 80 hours a week doing our regular jobs and then also building like a proof of concept demo for some potential client that then maybe equates into a sale or it doesn't. But it's a lot of work getting things working. It's expensive. So what we built was a distribution for Drupal, and it's called the demo framework. And you can see that it has very similar qualities to many other distributions, including like sort of a verbose page. And I'm not going to read this all out to you guys, but what I am going to do is go over some of the just architecture of what is in this distribution, and I'm going to talk about why I think it's a different approach to building a distribution for Drupal, and why I don't necessarily want to say that this is best practices Drupal or anything like that, but it is a new practice for how to approach Drupal. So we know about Drupal as a core when it gets installed, and it comes with some modules that you never use or modules that you turn off, like the overlay if you don't like it. But in the end, like it comes with this core, and that's something. But what we're trying to provide with these modules, which are features for Drupal that get installed with this, are actual packages that work for specific use cases. So the first one on the list is called Curator.
Well, if I could interrupt for a second, we basically went through and through really brutal trial and error, found that people said, well, we'd love Drupal except for this. It doesn't really do that really well. And okay, we need to think about how we show that. Or we like Drupal except for this other little thing. So this is the kind of the manifest for what went into this was really a lot of cycles of talking with customers, also talking with Drupal development shops, people in the digital agency space, those types of things, to really figure out what we need to show, and not to be like a prescriptive, this is Drupal, this is how you should do it, but be a tool for actually showing people something physical that they can take away. They can also, we can go through it in detail, we can actually turn it over to them. It's something that's real versus a lot of demo magic. Or, it's not, looking at a customer site that somebody built, saying, well, you can look at the outside, but we really can't give you logins because we really shouldn't be, letting you into our other customer systems, those types of things.
Yeah, that's really relevant. Thanks for that. So essentially, these modules are, in a way, maybe you might call them like white labelings of different features from Drupal. So the Spark distribution is most notorious for its inline editing, especially after DrupalCon and maybe some of the backlash that came from one of the keynotes about why inline editing was not that big of a deal. But the fact that it's in Drupal and it can come through the edit module is great. So we provide that, and the responsive previews from Spark, and so we have the Spark tools, and Spark as a distribution is small, and so it's easy enough to include as basically a feature. But then on top of that, we also take some stuff from large-scale Drupal, what they've built. And so large-scale Drupal, if you're not familiar, is an organization that is backed by actual large companies that are giving back to Drupal in the way that they can by basically paying developers, and they paid phase 2 to build this system called Site Preview System. And the Site Preview System lets you stage content, and it's really like an early content staging idea for Drupal, and it involves a little bit of finagling really to get it work. It's actually kind of weird because you have to add this one core patch that lets you do things with revisions, and it's kind of bending Drupal in a way. So the installation profile, since it runs on a make file and it's just going to run over and patch certain things and install modules, gets that site preview system ready to go. And then along with that, also, the people that are in this space are content editors that are worried about site previews, and they're worried about maybe inline editing. So they're also worried about workflows. So we include Workbench with Workbench moderation as part of this curator. The next one going forward, and this is what I might call the most notorious white labeling in a way, at least initially when I first built it, was taking the pieces of Panoply that we find to be extremely cool, like Panoply Magic, the way that you can actually view a view before you put it in the page with panels, and all of the panels tools that Panoply adds to Drupal and makes Drupal a really cool content authoring experience for dynamic page assembly. Comes with this, but also we take in stuff from D8. So in D8, blocks are entities, so fieldable blocks are something that you need for content assembly, so we include the bean module. And then other content assembly that you might do, obviously, comes with building views. Views is basically a dynamic assembly of queries that outputs content, so it fits inside the idea of an assembler. And then we get a little bit abstract with another one called Engage, but it comes back to this idea of content, community, and commerce, and those working together. So you need tools like organic groups, and you need other tools for web engagement management, social network integration, and e-commerce kind of in a package. So we provide, we've taken a lot of stuff from Commerce, and we've learned from Commerce Kickstart, and they provided a lot of, I think, best practices as far as how to build a distribution and how to work and make things actually happen for you using things like Migrate. But so we have Drupal Commerce in the Engage suite. And then the other ones are a little bit different. They're more about sort of things that have to happen in order to make either certain functionalities or features work. So the import one is probably the most actual custom code heavy one. I mean, they're all features, and then you can add a little bit of code to a feature. So in order to do things with Migrate and basically spin up a site and have this installation profile run and then have all of the content ready to go and have a full-on website happening, really the best thing that I found to do this is Migrate, and then what you do is you provide some comma-separated value. There's CSVs that Migrate just sort of slurps in, and you already have the content type set up, and you basically are ready to go. And I talked to different distribution builders, and I worked with some other modules before that were the Node Export does a little bit of this, and there's a UUID features module that does this, and ultimately Migrate, while it requires boilerplate code to write migration classes that we provide, base classes that you can extend in the import module, it is the best practice. And so there wasn't a lot of documentation for doing that, and it was one of the harder parts of building this distribution when we started building it, because we knew that we needed this, and basically just looking at the repository of Kickstart and seeing how they were doing it was enough to get started, and then figuring out what the different handlers and things like that were for importing different types of things like products versus just nodes is a whole nother bag that I can't go into because it'll take up the whole session.
And the reason we have an import module in the first place is because you can show people a framework, but what people really engage with is the experience that they're seeing. So we had to come up with both some original content as well as a way to get that into the framework really consistently. It also actually is a nice story for the developers when we talk to those folks, because we illustrate how you can pull in all of this data programmatically, and Drupal provides great toolkits for doing that.
Yeah, so and to that note, while migrate is definitely sort of like the standing like gold within the import module, we also do use feeds in that, so that we can actually show you, just as a basic example, things like bringing in Twitter feeds and things like that, and actually creating content based on Twitter content. So it's still abstract in the same vein as the rest of the distribution's core modules, where if something comes along and it's whether it's migrate 2.0 or some other way to get content into your site that's super easy to do, it would go in there. The other two, search and translator, are really very straightforward. The search one is showing you Apache Solr and getting Apache Solr configured and kind of set up, and all you really need to do is put in your key and you're ready to go if you have a Solr server. And then the translator one is specifically built around the idea of content translation, entity translation. So all of the, I think there's like maybe 10 multilingual modules. If anyone's familiar with some of the talks that Gabber's done about multilingual and the headache of getting that set up, this little feature is pretty nice because it has everything ready to go, and you just turn it on and you've got at least content translation for your basic page. And so with all of that, then you get something spun up that is essentially, maybe if you didn't do anything else with importing content, looks a lot just like regular Drupal with a couple of extra widgets and things at the top. This is where we step in and actually start to put in a lot of the things that Chris was talking about moving forward. We have scenarios. And scenarios are features just like the features that we use for building the core of this distribution, but they're specialized in the fact that, for one, none of these features, when you turn them on, actually turn on another module or bring in extra dependencies. They use the demo framework as their dependency, and they leverage it. So the only thing that they provide is maybe a new content type and the content that gets brought in, and things of that nature, configurations around the idea of a specific actual scenario that you want to demo. So if you needed to, you could build a scenario using this for any number of vertical markets and have demos ready to go, based on whatever your needs were, without having to actually make everything work. And that's really, I think, what's kind of special about the idea of this distribution being a macro distribution, not just a distribution that says, I'm going to install, not to discredit any other distributions, but I'm going to install these specific modules for this specific use case, and I'm going to have a mix of features that are basically going to work around the idea that you're never really going to try and take this and go the next level and do something completely different with it. Even though, as a lot of you know, people do that all the time with Drupal. They start with Commons, and then they end up with this social network site that does way more than Commons does out of the box, or other things. And they had to essentially fight and sort of extract things from it the entire time. The idea of this is that we provide a base layer that we could build a demo on top of. And so that to me is exciting, because it means that it can set a precedent for future distributions or just versions of Drupal and how we package Drupal and what we do with Drupal for giving it to people. That's very different than just, yeah, go try it out, because that's one thing. But to actually be able to go in and say, okay, here is a travel website. What did I do to get this travel website running on top of the distribution? Well, it's just this web engagement management module. I literally turn it on, and then I get this, like a full site. We have, it's not maybe a full robust site, but it's a demo site, and it has things. So in this case, Nexus is a travel company, and we have this theme that's sort of generic, so that maybe Nexus doesn't have to be a travel company. They could be a bank, but they could still use this theme. But what we've brought in is content around traveling to London and visiting Iceland, and so we have these products on the site, but then we also have actual blog posts, and we're showing the idea of an engagement scenario where the idea for the travel company, the travel nexus, would be to have someone come to the site and want to return to the site because there's actually quality content on the site, but then through using it, they end up actually maybe buying a vacation from this travel company. And so we show a lot of different things with this. In fact, we show different user scenarios effectively. So we talk about an end user that comes to this site. And can you guys probably can't read that slide, but let's see. Presentation. So maybe a little better. No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Oops, that's wrong too. I'm sorry. Slideshow. Anyway, no, maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, oh. Okay, cool. So yeah, the end user, her name's Jennifer, and she's looking at this site as an anonymous user, maybe essentially at first, but then she's used it before and then she signed up, and so maybe we have a little bit of info about her because she's filled out a profile or she's done some different, she's looked at some different articles on the site, so we've sort of actually followed what she's been up to and added information, put her in a customer segment, and can see things about her. She doesn't really know any of this. She doesn't even know she's using Drupal or Drupal's doing this. She's just using the travel website. And so, actually I have Jennifer already logged in. There we go. So, here's Jennifer on her profile. And when Jennifer goes to the homepage, she's actually going to see a little bit different. Got logged out. I'll log in. So we see some London content, the Iceland content. Jennifer logs in, and things are a little bit different for her in this scenario. So she sees tropical paradise, skydiving in the Caribbean, win a Caribbean vacation getaways, all of these things based around more of like a tropical thing. And so, we're driving that right now, basically just with some simple taxonomy on her user profile. So we're looking at Jennifer, and we see that she's got tropical spa and free Wi-Fi, things that we'd like to bring in more with the demo. Obviously, this being a MVP product is a lot more web engagement management, and we've been talking to some people in town actually about that, which is really cool. So Jennifer's on the site, and she's going to go ahead and, and this is really kind of the demo script then that we get started on. And so I'll run through a little bit of it. Not all of it because we don't have time, but basically as you would if you were going to give this to a client, potential client. And let's say Jennifer sees this contest to win a tropical Caribbean vacation. And she can see that it's, if you're familiar enough with Drupal to know about organic groups, it's actually an organic group that she can join, and she can enter the contest. So she hits the enter the contest button, and my local will like chug along for a second here, I apologize. And when she's entered into the contest then, we've thrown in this little extra notifier that basically says for our demo purposes, maybe Jennifer wouldn't see it, but we can, hence the two different types of status messages, that we're actually transmitting a lead now into Marketo because this integration that we have set up tracks people joining these segments or these groups and by entering contests. And so now she also sees some other stuff that's a little bit different on the page. Before she was seeing blog posts on the side rail, which they're still there, but now that product is back and it's in her face and it's there as one of the top links that she could click on. And she can also see that there's a little bit of community going on here with joining a group. So there's actually some group posts from other people in the some other members of the group are writing product reviews and talking about things of that nature. And so she goes to this actual product and sees that she can add it to a cart. And then we talk about Drupal commerce and integrations with Drupal commerce and everything that involves, and say that now it's Jennifer's going to go ahead and buy this and do all that. I won't really run through filling out fake info about Jennifer. That's not a good demo. But what we do then is we say that it's maybe it's a month later or two, and she's actually in the Caribbean, and Jennifer's using her iPad now on the site, and she's going to log in. And the idea of like showing the iPad here as a way to use Drupal with a responsive theme is like a really quick indicator of what's actually going on. So this is kind of wigging out on me. There we go. So, or even an iPhone. And the idea then is that we're going to show you that Drupal is responsive without having to necessarily talk about that Drupal can do responsive design. And I think that's important because the last thing that you want to do is end up in RFP hell in a demo and have this checklist of things that, if the client wants to sit there and have their RFP and check things across, that's fine. But what we want to focus on with a scenario is to frame a use case and run through it. And so, we'll do more with Jennifer, in a demo to use the phone and actually write a product review and tweet it or something like that. But, moving on, since I'm going to run out of time if I do our entire demo, basically what I'm getting at is that you write a script, you create a scenario, and you get this Drupal out of the box from the demo framework that you can leverage. That way you can focus on the things that are important for your actual demo, writing the script and engaging the customer, not like, how do I get Migrate to work? Or how do I get Spark installed so that with Spark and Panoply on the same site, I don't see JavaScript errors on every page, which might happen if you don't install the right versions at the right time. So yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot of legwork for everyone. And because the idea is that, this real sales situation requires real proof that Drupal can do what we say out of the box. We know that Drupal out of the box means a lot of different things to people. Maybe out of the box means just straight up Bartik, like we talked about earlier. But from the perspective of the community here, we know that Drupal can do a lot of things. So when I think about Drupal, and I think of the idea of Drupal out of the box, I'm not thinking about, oh, blue with the droplet and no content. I think White House. I think big websites that do cool things like the petitioning that they do. That to me is, that's Drupal. And I understand that, but getting people to understand that Drupal out of the box is Drupal plus contrib is a hard thing to do at times. So a real proof is what we're trying to provide here. And we're positioning ourselves just as any other project. This started as a sort of an internal tool, but always with the idea that this is something that everyone could use. Maybe not even for demoing. I mean, talk to me later about other things you could do with this, training. But basically, the idea is to work on this together and collaborate on a system that is essentially, here is something that we use when we need to demo Drupal. So we can actually say, if you're a shop even of 3 or 4 people, and you get this, proposal falls on your lap, and you're like, wow, they want to see something next week. How are we going to do this? And they have all these checkboxes in their RFP, and they're going to go through all of them. Well, we could try and work a 100-hour week and see what we can come up with of spec work and hope that maybe this deal lands. Or we could write a script around the travel website, or build our own little travel website-esque scenario for the demo framework, and that won't take you a 100-hour week. To build a new scenario, you might need 2 people, one person that understands the users and wants to write the user personas, and a little bit of the, you do this, you log in as Jennifer, you buy a product, you return a month later, and you meet these criteria. And then a developer that can just say, okay, we've got all these feature sets here, I just need a couple of new content types, and kick it over to the themer and make it look good and spend a couple days on it. And it's a way better POC than anything that you could have come up with even in 100 hours of your own man time starting from scratch. And so it's obviously something that we want to do together. Let's sell Drupal together. We're competing in spaces to maybe get clients or do other things. We're working together always, 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 though, on Drupal. And that should never be forgotten. Even as we grow and companies start to get big, it's not that important, and we're not that big, as any company in Drupal. We're all in this together. And I don't know if anybody was at Thad's presentation earlier today, but he basically showed a graph that I wish I could show right now, because it shows Drupal community being so much bigger than any company that works on Drupal. Even all of the companies combined working on Drupal still don't match up with the community, because there's actual people that don't work for companies that just do Drupal. It's just bigger than anybody could ever scale. So we want to do this together. And so another thing that we've done was we built this community site on Commons, and it's demodrupal.org. And I encourage anyone that is here or knows somebody that is doing these sort of things, whether they're a sales engineer or solutions architect type, or they're a business person or whatever, they want to demo Drupal, show demo. They have someone that's come to them and said, just show me Drupal, and they want to work on that problem. That's what this site is for. So check it out. And so with that, that's our introduction to the community, really, for what the demo framework is. Do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, just that the idea was to really have a starting point for not only Acquia, but anybody to use, both to go pitch Drupal, but potentially build things on it. So basically be an accelerator like any other distribution would be. But we've built in a lot of flexibility around, as Brant pointed out, the way we enable different things within the framework itself, but also how you reskin it very quickly so you can take this and use it for something that you have to have a quick turnaround on.
And yeah, I actually, since we have a little bit of extra time here before we do Q&A, I just wanted to show you guys some of the stuff that's in this too that is a little bit more interesting to the end user. So I'm logged in now as like a assembler type person, and so I have access to Panoply and panels, IPE type stuff. So I can actually add content and drag and drop blocks and rearrange the homepage, or visit an article and do editing in a workflow. And I mean, we're not just like blowing smoke here. It's really here, and it's really working in a lot of different ways. And we have access to Workbench and inline editing. And this is Drupal 7. It looks a lot like D8 because we're using the backported D8 modules. But I can go ahead and do things like inline editing, and then that's going to actually kick off a moderation workflow. And I can, let's see if we can pull up the moderations. We can see that we did title field editing through in-place editing. I didn't even realize until we built this that Workbench was actually that sort of granular about how things work. And so this is a really great way to also discover things in Drupal and bring things forward as a community. If you say, come to us and say, we want to work together on this, and you guys don't have this module in there, but that would be really great to show. I'd love to talk. So I guess with that, then we could do some Q&A since we have a little bit of time. Does anyone have any? Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why there's a demo.org site instead of using Drupal infrastructure?
Sure. Yeah. So the question was, why fragment and do a demo Drupal.org and not do it on DO. And I think that the reason why is a little bit more apparent if we look at the site. But I think that there's definitely room on groups.drupal.org for that sort of activity. But to make a group called demo and not have the subgroups and the things that you need, maybe really to get sort of specific about this. Another reason why I thought that this was a good idea was because it seems to be a practice that some of the more well-known distributions are gravitating towards. So Atrium has their own site that runs on Atrium, and they eat their own dog food in that sense, where they actually work on Atrium on DO still, but they have a site that's dedicated to that. And I guess recently, Commerce has brought in a sort of a similar thing for Kickstart and also for their partners for actually using Commons again, but as a separate community that people can come in and specifically use that's geared toward that. So in a way, I didn't want to fill up GDO with a bunch of demo spam, but also I thought that the idea of having groups so that I could actually have a group about WEM, like about web engagement management, and not have to, kind of start a thread about demoing in the GDO group, or talk about like having groups for a specific use case. So Jacob is an architect that works with us at Acquia, and he started this group called Music and Entertainment Use Case. He works in New York, and he's had this problem of dealing with this use case, and he thought it would be a good idea for a group that we could talk about. And so we have this thread here where we're talking about, should we use a digital asset management system as an integration for Drupal for the demo, or should we actually use media and work on media and do things with media module as our demo? And I can provide a poll and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know, I think Commons 3.0 is a really good use case here.
I appreciate all your answers, but groups.org is moving to Commons.
Yeah, and if that happens, then we'll use migrate or something. No, not really, but we'll have to migrate or something, because I think ultimately, like, if that's the case and it provides the same sort of thing and we get the type of interactivity that we need, then I think that that's fine. I mean, this literally is sitting on my own cloud instance that took me like 2 hours to set up. So it was just like, here's a place where people can go now, because in the future is the future. So that's a year from now, or it's 6 months, or it's tomorrow, but it's not now, and you can do this now. And that's my argument. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys for your time.